Women Talk Radio with Sandra Beck and Linda Crater celebrate the thoughts and opinions of magnetic, spirited, and influential women. Each week, bold, brilliant women spark vigorous conversations on the complexities of life, love, and happiness. Now here are your hosts, Sandra Beck and Linda Crater.
Hey ladies, this is Sandra Beck, and I am so excited to span the globe again. This has got to be some sort of record between this week and last week. We have had 3 Australians on the show. We welcome to today's show Geraldine Tegelov coming from Australia. We welcome Kathy Crafty from Texas, Jacqueline Lopez, a native of Brazil, now living in Santa Barbara, Lou Paget, a native of Canada, now residing in in Los Angeles. We've got Lois Letchford, who is originally from Australia as well, and now lives in New York State. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is so great because we bring people together from around the world and we talk about things. We talk about family. We talk about rejection and love and honesty and integrity. And what does that mean? And today we're going to talk about family labels. And one of the labels that I wear is the baby girl in my family. And the funny thing is, when I got divorced, you know, my oldest brother calls me and he's like, Sam, do you need any money? Are you okay? And my younger brother flies in and he goes, what can I do for you? How can I protect you? And I was 40. 40, highly educated, own my own company. But in their minds, God bless them, I will never be probably, like my brother told me, he goes, I will never see you as anything but scraped knees and pigtails swinging from a tree. So that's a label that I adore, but sometimes it's hard to live up to that label when you're 40 something, 50 something. So these labels stick to us. They stick to us like glue. And I think it's really hard to overcome these labels. Now, I have chosen to embrace it. Like, I just kind of sink into home, and it allows me, when I go home with all my brothers and sisters, to, do things like skip out on doing the dishes. I can kind of grow into that label to my advantage. But the downside is I don't know if they will ever see me as a grown-up adult. I'm going to go to Geraldine Tegelov first in Australia. Welcome to the show. And family labels. You've got a big extended family and everybody's got a label.
I certainly do, Sandra. And as a child, I was the one. I should say hello, everybody. Sorry about that. Yes, as growing up, I was the middle child of 5, which is always a bit of an issue anyway. But I was the black sheep of the family. And my mum used to often say it to me, you're the black sheep of the family. And I was also the one who could stand on her own 2 feet. You can paddle your own canoe. You don't need help from anybody, which was quite the opposite to you, Sandra. So, I was always having to be that black sheep of the family, I suppose, or be that one who was able to cope with everything and not need help from anybody else. And that played out, even having the birth of our first child was such a difficult time because nobody thought that I really needed any help. And I really needed help. Yes, so labels certainly do stick.
I'm going to go over to Jacqueline. Jacqueline, you were raised in Brazil. You now reside in Santa Barbara. You have had to have your share of labels.
Oh, yeah. So I am the eldest of 3 children, and I always wanted to discover the world. And in that way, every time I go visit my family, and I adore my family, but I have nothing in common with them. It's almost like, who are these people? How did I end up in this family? Because they are just so different from me. They have no desire to travel, no desire to discover anything. They're just happy as they can be. And I love them to tears. But I feel like I am an alien in that family.
Can I say?
Yes, jump in, please.
This is Lois. That's how I feel, Jackie. I'm an alien to my family. we have my brother is the eldest, and then there were 3 girls, and my younger sister and I were always known as the girls.
Oh.
But now I so and I'm the middle girl, and I feel like an alien to my sisters and my family. It's very interesting.
Hi, this is Lou. I'm one of 6, but I get to have all kinds of different labels in our family. There's 3 older and 3 younger, so I'm the oldest of the 3 younger. But then I also have an identical twin sister who we were adopted. So we're known as the twins. And then I have a younger sister, but I have an older sister. I have an older gay sister. I mean, the labels just go on and on. But one of the things that happened today, I was writing out some notes for this, and I went, some of these labels, they never just change. They just remain as, someone's limitations about you. And yet, if you have the ability to ask some of your family members, I did this one time with a quiz, and it was, what do you know about that sibling that they don't know that you know? Ooh. And I'll tell you, I found out some stuff from my sisters that I was like, you have got to be kidding. And one of them was my older sister saying to me, you are absolutely unstoppable. And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, it doesn't matter. She said, from the time you were little, she said, if you decided you were doing something, she said, it didn't matter what someone said, you were doing it. And part of that dynamic was because we were, the twins and we were adopted, my mother didn't really want to have much to do with us. So I didn't have a mother who said, don't do stuff. I kind of got left to do things by myself. And I was damned and determined I was going to do things, that was of interest to me. When I had a focus, And this morning I did a meditation and someone was talking about John Bradshaw's. And we may want to use this as an exercise for all of us. John Bradshaw said, the wounded inner child. Just do this and stand and walk up to the house you were raised in. Look in the window and see yourself. And what are you feeling and what are you seeing? And I did this morning with Paul. And he said what he saw, and he was the youngest of 9 of a family that had no money. He said, I was the baby, but he said, what I felt was I was completely protected. So this may be an exercise, and actually Oprah said this is one of the most profound exercises she'd ever done for herself. Tag, who's next?
Oh, it's me. Oh, go ahead. I think I'm getting an echo, so if I am, maybe the text can help us with that. I love what you said about looking in the window and seeing your inner child. And I think one reason my mother just passed away. And so I was in a very tense situation with my 2 siblings, and we just breezed through it. I mean, we were such a comfort to each other, but I don't think that would have been true right after we became adults. I mean, all of us have gone back and really looked hard at our upbringing. And I think that has helped. It taught me, one of the things I had to do was apologize to one of my younger siblings and just say, I know you're an adult now, and I'm going to quit treating you like a kid because it's not fair. And I had to ask for forgiveness about that. As a firstborn, I think I just had that sense of entitlement and empowerment that my parents had put on me. I mean, you do that naturally when you're raising kids anyway, but when you become adults, it's time to put that away. So I think that helped. But I love the idea of looking in the window and thinking about, what do I see when I look in that window of how my life was as a child? That's a powerful exercise.
Yeah, John Bradshaw.
The only Bradshaw I know is Carrie Bradshaw. So
I was thinking the same thing, Sam.
So who haven't we heard from? We heard from Kathy, Jacqueline, Lou, Geraldine, Lois. What about you, Linda Crater?
Well, I love how everybody does have labels, but mine was always the good girl. And if you ask my father now,
somebody would say to him, this has happened before. They'd say, she always says she was the good girl. And he goes, she really was. And my sister would love it because I always followed the rules as a young teenager. So she got away with murder because they assumed that she was exactly like I was. And, that of course put tension between us. So now my joke is always that, I'm getting to the point where I really need to rebel before it's too late. I think I have my own little acts of rebellion, but often they're just amusing to me. But I think family labels, that's not a harmful label. That's all, unless you allow it to be. But I love that you have to be conscious of not labeling other people, because that can be harmful. I know in our family, our extended family, there was one child who was just more difficult. And so when you become known as the difficult child, it almost makes you want to be that way. So I'll take good girl over difficult child any day, but we don't get to choose our labels, do we?
No, like on The Big Bang Theory, where Howard Wolowitz wants so bad to be like Rocket Man, and he ends up being called Fruit Loops.
Well, I think also we can be, once we know the power of what labels are in families, this is Lou speaking, I think we can step in as adults and make an adjustment or a shift on something. And I'll use an example. In my marriage, my stepson, his mother, that was when children, there were 3 kids when I got married, 17, 14, and 12. 2 boys and a girl. And I was 30. But the thing about the kids is that they were great. But his mother, the middle son, learning disabled was the thing at the time. So he was chosen to be the one who was learning disabled because he was the kid who basically was like this to his mother. Now we have to go, so we're going to have to wait to find out what happened to the change on that label.
Oh, I love it. Thank you, Lou. This is Linda. We're going to go on a short break, and we will come back and continue this titillating story about all our family labels. It's a cliffhanger indeed. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
We're Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and we'll return after these short messages.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
According to a Gallup poll, 56% of Americans want to lose weight. Most of us know that muscle burns more calories than fat. So when you're trying to lose weight, you want to lose body fat while preserving the muscle you have. Lifting weights while you're losing weight is not an option. It's a requirement. According to a Penn State study, when dieters don't pump iron, 22% of their weight loss comes from losing muscle. So if you lose 20 pounds without lifting weights, almost 5 pounds will be muscle. Upping your protein intake is important, and Columbia University researchers found that protein intake plays a significant role in preserving lean muscle mass during weight loss. Preserve your muscle as you drop the body fat. I'm Annette Hammond. Like us on Facebook at Fitness Minute with Annette Hammond.
It's merging in her.
First official 4th of July party was held at the White House in 1801. But did you know that countries other than the U.S. celebrate American Independence Day or July 4th? Denmark, Italy, Portugal, and England all have 4th of July parties. In fact, the British celebrate their independence with bungers and fizzgigs, otherwise known as firecrackers, just like in America. Squib is slang for an electric match used in pyrotechnics. Our dog celebrates July 4th every year the same way, by cowering under the bed. Many European celebrations take place, of course, at American military bases. I'd like to send a special thanks to all our armed forces stationed around the world for everything you do to provide freedom and independence to America. I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
Hey, ladies, this is Sandra Beck with my wonderful co-host, Linda Crater, and we are visiting today with Lois Letchford, Geraldine Tegelov, Lou Paget, Jacqueline Lopez, and Kathy Craffey. We are actually spanning the globe. Now, before we went to commercial break, we had a cliffhanger. We were with Lou Paget in the past, and she was talking about her 4-3-2-1 factor. Go ahead, Lou.
Exactly. 4-3-2-1 factor for me is 4 dogs, 3 kids, 2 houses, 1 husband. And the 3 kids were great. Dogs were great. In-laws were great. The issue was the number 1. Anyway, when I talking about the labels and how they are put on, my second stepson was 14 at the time. And that was when being learning disabled was a label that was interesting. And so his mother, he became the learning disabled child. Now, the reason she put that label on him is because this was a kid who did not put up with any of her BS. And he would call her on things. So she was she was the parent, so she was in the power position. She ended up sticking him into a school that was for people who they had behavioral difficulties. He came home this one day and he said to me, he said, well, I got walled today, W-A-L-L-E-D.
Huh.
And I said, what is walled? And he said, well, they make you stand in the corner with your arms over your head for about half an hour. I said, excuse me, why? And he said, well, there's some kids that are completely out of control at that school. My best friend at the time was Brian Thalheimer. Brian is Ode to Brian. Any of you who know my books? That's Brian. And Brian is the one who taught me some of the best oral and manual techniques, period, because he was gay. Brian also had been that kid who was labeled as having issues and being put in a special type class in school. And he said to me, get him the F out of that school. And I was like, what? And he goes, before he has to go into the, senior high, get him out of there. If he goes in there and he still has that attached to him as the label of that's the kid who is that, he said he will never, ever be able to get over that. And I remember I walked in and we called Ted himself, or HS. And I said, HS, we got to have a conversation about TJ, because I said he needs to get out of that school, period. And he was like, and I told TJ, I said, look, you are not what they are telling you you are. You simply aren't. And I said, you are literally me, 18 years younger, period. And he was like this. Oh, and he is. That's what he is. So he was the kid who would fight back and then got labeled with that. So sometimes as adults, we have to step in and make sure we do our part when we see something that's so off the mark. Okay, Lois, I think it's you.
Yes, well, my story of labels. I was introduced to labels through my son, because I'm 60 now and we didn't have them when I was growing up. But my son did not learn to read in grade 1, and he sat in the classroom and hid, and the teacher screamed at him. And at the end of grade 1, they do an IQ test, and of course his IQ is low. He's got no strength and he's got no words. I took him out of school for a time, and with teaching him, he started to ask questions that were not consistent with the diagnosis of the school. And that amazed me. And I needed that experience to believe in him. When I went back to the diagnostician and said, look, this is the question he asked. She put her hands on her hips and said, well, he's the worst child I've seen in 20 years of teaching.
Oh, no.
And it's like we were talking about in the last segment on rejection. You need to hear that lowest point to come back and say, well, you can call him whatever you like. My son is going to learn to read, and we're going to find a way to do it. End of story. And that's what I did. And because of that, and because of him, I'm a reading specialist. And in May this year, he will get a PhD from Oxford.
Oh, my.
Oh, touche.
Glory.
So
congratulations. That's awesome.
That's amazing.
Well, it took living on 3 continents. So I am passionate about teaching children in the school where they are, in the place where they are. No child should have to be moved around the world to get an education.
Amen.
Well, Lois, thank you for having your mom gene come through like with a blazing sword. And that teacher, there are unfortunately some really bad teachers. And who do you think ends up diagnosing kids as being ADHD? People who are doing so, teachers, because they can't control them.
I would like to talk about self-labeling. When I was, this is a speculation of mine, and I think more or less probably happened this way. I was probably about 8 years old, and overheard the conversation between my mom and a friend. Well, she's not doing really well in school. And that was enough for me to believe that I was not good in school. I would never make it. I would never pass math because I just can't do it. I heard that, and immediately I put myself in a box that I was not capable of passing exams in school. And I ran with that in the show like a chain throughout the school years, and all it was that I get bored in listening lessons, and because I'm more creative mind. But I plowed through, I became a CPA despite the fact that I believed that I'm never going to be good. And I proved myself. In other words, here's a lesson. Sometimes we hear something or imagine something, and we carry with us the label that we are of our own creation. Mm-hmm. And then something happened. Because I remember when I was about to get into the university, I took the exam and I passed, and I surprised myself. It's like, wow, I'm actually smart. I mean, all these years I ran this story in my head that I was not good in school. What a bunch of BS. I mean, that's my ego. Having a feast with me. So, I mean, I learned a big lesson in my life that it's not about being, good in school because you get distracted, because you're creative. That's not it. And we medicate our children. We put them through a host of medications to straighten them up. It's very sad.
Yes. With your story, Jackie, you say labels become a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that is the problem with labels, particularly in school, that the child is learning disabled. We didn't teach him. He can't do it. And then we try nothing else. We don't come up with any options other than that child cannot do it. And that's where it's a cycle, and it's blaming the child, and it's horrendous.
Wow, that's really powerful, Lois. I'm so glad you mentioned that. The whole idea of self-fulfilling prophecies tied with self-labels. And the other thing that is kind of like the other side of that coin, since we're on Dynamic Women and we love to take apart all different angles on things, there's one side where we're saying these negative self-talk things to ourselves. Like, I forgot to say I'm Kathy Craffey, but that's who I am. And so now I'm thinking, oh, gee, I missed that. I should have said that. But anyway, so we have these negative self-talk things that we do that are labels, self-labels. And then I'll say out loud some things that I think are really actually true of me. I know my strengths. I am very right-brained, and I'm really creative and great with philosophical ideas, but I don't do numbers real well. And so I say that out loud in a group, and everybody in the room, we've gotten so self-conscious about negative self-talk. The rest of the room will go, oh, no, don't say that. But what I'm really saying is I want to sit next to the person who's great at numbers. I want to enjoy and admire their skill because I really need it. So I'm not trying to be negative about myself. I just know my limits and I know where I fit in, and I'm really excited when other people bring a strength that I need. So that's an interesting part of this whole discussion of how we label ourselves.
I think it's okay to label yourself, though. To me, you don't have to be good at everything.
Yeah.
I mean, why do we have to? We've come, I guess, to this particular lifetime to express ourselves in particular ways. And, to me, if I have to be good at everything, then I'm not putting the time into what I've chosen to express right in this moment of now. So it's, I agree that, sitting next to those people is wonderful and just admiring their particular strength. But I don't necessarily have to be good at everything. And I don't think it's negative talk. I think it's just accepting what part of you, what facet of you that you want to express at this point in time.
I hate following Geraldine. It's like
that was
so
beautiful.
I know, where there was like this pause, and we're like, well, somebody's got to say something. It's either me or you, Linda.
Yeah.
But it is. I mean, this moment of now, like we are ever changing.
Well, and this is Lou. To try and be everything is exhausting. It's like trying to be perfect. There is no perfection. There is doing it the best that you can. Because if you're looking for perfection, you're basically looking to not get it complete. And I had a sister-in-law who was like that. If it wasn't absolutely perfect, she wouldn't continue with it. And she never completed anything. And that was what held her up, was the fear that it wasn't going to be good enough. And someone told her, because she had parents who were both teachers. Oops. And she was an only child. So if it wasn't perfect, don't hand it in.
You know, I think that this can also come, this is Linda, I think it can also come from relationships where you are labeled. And piggybacking on what you just said, Lou, where you're not considered good enough. And good enough is really a harsh thing, because what do you measure that against? And then you start to strive for perfection, which, as you just said, and I agree with, it doesn't exist. And so some of these labels are impossible to escape until you realize that you really are good enough. And as women, we've talked about this on other shows, we self-label, we're negative self-talk, and sometimes we're really, really hard on ourselves. But once we realize we are good enough, in fact, we're pretty darn terrific, I think it makes a huge difference and takes a weight off your shoulders. So some labels we can grow to throw off. And I think that's just a marvelous thing. We have to go on another break, and we will come back and talk further about family labels, self-labeling, and what labels do mean and take us where they take us. We'll be right back.
We're Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and we'll return after these short messages.
McMillan from Ontario, Canada, was driving to a meeting when he saw what looked like a can of cola moving around on the side of the road. Curious, he stopped to investigate and discovered a skunk had gotten its head stuck in a soda can. After a moment of abulia, or indecision, he decided to try and save the potentially woofy animal. Woofy is another word for smelly. He grabbed the can and engaged in dang swang, or a cooperative tug of war with the skunk, all the while hoping he wouldn't get sprayed. Finally, the skunk managed to pop its head out of the can and land safely on the ground. After a brief stare down, the skunk turned and ran into the woods. What's another word for running away in fright? Funkify.
It's Marching
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
Hey, ladies, this is Sandra Beck, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Linda Crater, and we've got such a great group of women today. We're visiting with Kathy Craffey, with Dr. Geraldine Tegelov, with Jacqueline Lopez, Lois Letchford, and Lou Paget, and we're talking about labels. And sometimes we get a label, especially in a family dynamic or an office dynamic or a group dynamic, that gives people permission to treat us in a certain way. Like, I remember when I was new to radio, I thought, oh, this is so cool. I have my older sister on. Like, that'll be really fun. You know, I had my cousin Jen on. I had, you know, different people on talking with me. And I think my older sister just plumb forgot that we were on the radio, that I was the host of the show. And she cut me off in the middle of it. And she's like, excuse me, let me finish speaking. She goes, stop speaking because it's my turn to speak now. And that was exactly how she spoke to me when I was little. And it was really funny because my co-host Christy Holly, who has 3 sisters, she's like, like, and I took it with a grain of salt and laughed. But the point was that I was still in that role or that label of little sister who can be bossed around, not a radio host. Like if she was on Kathy Kraffy's show or Dr. Geraldine Tegelov's show or Jacqueline Lopez, your show, or Linda Crater, your show, Lou, you guys, she would never have done that, but she totally put me in my place right on the air for, thousands of people to hear. And, a lot of people wrote in finding it hilarious. A lot of people, it actually struck a chord in them that they will never be seen as anything other than the little.
If I can just add, Sam, this is Lou. That direction of do not have others, just because family members know you as something, they do not have permission to treat you the way a total stranger would. And that was from Alanya Van Sant. And she said, if someone can't live up to the capacity of where you are, and if they don't keep their word, and if they don't treat you the way that they should, then you have to put the boundaries in place with them. And just say, that may be your label, but I'm telling you right now, I'm a grown-up and it doesn't work anymore.
Amen, sister.
Done.
I would like to talk about why we label people, why we label other human beings. And I find that it's comforting to quote unquote know that person. So let me give you an example. When I talk to somebody on the phone and with my accent, they're immediately thinking, oh, she's from Latin America. She's probably looking for jobs. She's this and that. And so they make a profile of me based on my voice, my accent. The same way when they see me, in person, I look like a person from Latin America. So they start making this label because eons ago, if we don't know if that person was our enemy or our friend or people from our tribe or not our tribe, our enemy tribe, then we know that we can defend ourselves. So that's why we do it, why we label people. So we know that we forgot that we don't need to defend ourselves anymore from people. And what people do is they box you in a place thinking that they know things about you. And it's a comforting thing. That's why people do the labeling. It doesn't see the full expression of that human being. So I recommend people not to label others because it limits you. You limiting that person to what you think who they are based on their background, their nationality, or whatever thing that you know about them. Let them be expressive with their expansiveness, with their unlimited potential instead of labeling. Labeling is for small people. Don't label people. In other words, that's my message. Is because you are effectively limiting who that person is and her or his full expression, who she or he can be.
I think the word we use is stereotyping.
Yes,
that's right.
Right.
And you are right. We do limit through stereotyping.
Now, I have to add some levity to this because Kathy has commented on this in the past because Sandra and I are co-hosts, right? But we have styles. And one day, Sandra decided to label our styles. And I took exception to the label that she used. And we talked it out. See, I won't use the label right now, but at any rate, she labeled in a way that I didn't take as a positive thing. It was mostly that one of us is East Coast and one of us is West Coast, and one of us is a little more structured, and one of us is a little loosey-goosey.
Let's guess who that is.
Yeah, I'm sure you can't guess at all. So I just laughed, and I thought, we're even in love, we are labeling ourselves and each other in certain ways, and stereotyping. And I think it's pretty funny go on. So we actually work very well together because we are different.
Yeah.
So I accept my labels very easily. But I wanted to bring up the fact that in some labels, you do self-fulfill, but you also can make yourself even a magnified person that is X, Y, or Z. And that's just not always smart to do in terms of it limits. Jacqueline is right. It limits people in what they think. So I'll give you another example and then you guys can take it from there. I happen to be very petite. And so I get the like munchkin and cute and things, you know what I'm talking about? And so that doesn't really flatter you as you get to be an adult and a professional and a radio host and all of these sorts of things. But I laugh. So does anybody else have that experience?
Oh, yeah. This is Lou. I'm one of 4 girls in the family, and then there's 2 boys who are elder. But my twin sister and I are always referred to as the twins with that label. But at one point, Dee Dee was here and we were doing something, and Paul said, well, Lou, you're athletic and Dee Dee's petite. And Dee Dee went like this, I'm athletic too. And she was like, because she's like an inch shorter than I am. And, and she was like, no, I do not want that label. And I used to have to fight in my family to have them, because what they would do, when you're a twin, people think that it's perfectly okay to compare you. They do not compare me to my older sister. They do not compare me to my younger sister, but people think there's perfect license to compare, particularly identical twins, which we are.
Right.
And, you know, who's smarter, who's prettier, who's this, who's that. And here's the thing about many labels. A label given to one is to the detriment of the other.
Good point.
And that's something that, and what makes me just go frickin' sideways, the number of people who write about twins who aren't twins. How dare you? How dare you? You just put a button on that. But the thing when you are given these labels, I had to fight in my family to not have them do that with me and Dee Dee. I said, look, you know, you don't do it with me and Kath. You don't do it with me and Cher. So why do you think you have license to do? And they said, well, you're twins. I said, you don't have permission. Forget it. And it took them by surprise.
Did they stop?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
Yes, they did. But they weren't happy about it.
Their family. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Lois?
Yes, I'm still here. Am I still connected?
You are definitely still connected. What do you think about the labels when they're used in the family and you have to set the boundary?
I love what Lou said. I'm not going to have that label. And I think I've always fought against not so much labels, but tried to be my own person because I couldn't do things that my sisters did. So I made my own way. But labels, I think, are very limiting and really quite frightening with the stereotypes and the limitations that we bring with them, just like Jackie said.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a matter of, you know, showing, and I think even the Olympics that have gone today, the number of males that are there that are gay and coming out and we're saying it's okay.
Well,
just, you know, not from the family, but widening the discussion really. Say, yes, labels do cause problems.
My labeling, or when I had to face up to family, was more to do, oh, I'm sorry, everybody, religion. It was the time, you know, being brought up Irish Catholic, and it was, you know, one of those things, heavens above. And I mean, I'm very grateful for that, but there came the time when I certainly moved in a far more spiritual direction. And there was that moment when I had to face up to, and I did, I went and spoke to every single one of my siblings to say, I'm really sorry, but you know, that's not who I am any longer. And this is who I am. And, you know, it would be great if you could accept me for the direction that I'm heading in. So that was quite a big moment for me to actually sit in front of them and say, I'm really not who you want me to be any longer, and get over it, basically. So, yeah.
But isn't that what dynamic women do? We grow, we then stand up for ourselves, we do set boundaries. We can help with the controlling of the labels, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And look, I'm always amazed that they never really ask me about what I'm doing or anything to do with work, or, they steer around that. They ask how the kids are and the grandkids and all of that. But they never actually come out and say, and how is your business going? I think they're just a little bit scared. Yeah.
Well, that's because you would know them too well. They're kind of afraid of what you actually What's
happened?
Kathy?
Oh, sorry. I thought we were losing it. Well, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about, I love it that Geraldine is going around telling her family that she's changed and she's made a new, like she's grown in a new way. I'm laughing because when I became spiritual, I had to go back and apologize to everyone. It's like a whole different set of boundaries for me. But I am also laughing because of the religion reference. I was thinking, Adam, his first job in the garden was to name all the animals. He put labels on everything, and God commanded him to do it. And I'm wondering, maybe there's something to this. So when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about how labeling can be a positive thing.
Okay. That's a good idea, because I think labeling can be a positive thing. We're just living in a time where labels shut down conversations. And so turning it on its head and making it a positive, I think is marvelous. And the things that we're proud of, if we are self-labeling and changing our labels or modifying our labels as we get older, I think it shows a real strength and a tenacity to say, I am different. I do grow. I'm not the same person as I once was, because aren't we supposed to grow throughout our lives and to push the boundaries out of our own little envelope? I know that I think the world is such a bigger, beautiful place the more I see of it. So we are going to go on a short break, and we will be back and continue talking with these dynamic women, and more to come.
We're Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and we'll return after these short messages.
It's words you never heard. Got a lead foot? According to state troopers, here's what not to do when you get pulled over. Don't be a lachrymous and start crying right away. It doesn't help. But if you're under 20, crying won't be held against you. Don't ask for a break, and don't yell or start any argy-bargy. And one trooper said, if they're going to flirt with me to get out of a ticket, it would probably insult my intelligence. But unfortunately, I don't get hit on all that often. So flirting or being a gill flirt won't work. Did you know that 15% of all drivers get 76% of all traffic tickets? And the odds of winning if you challenge a traffic ticket in court are 1 in 3. So what should you do when you get pulled over for speeding? Be courteous to the officer, and most of all, be honest. I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
ADHD, or Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, is a developmental disorder with symptoms that include hyperactivity, impulsivity, and inattention. While it is said that 9% of school-age children have ADHD, 4% of adults are also afflicted with the disorder. In children, it can interfere with academic or social performance, and with adults, it can hinder with work and personal relationships. NC State University states that exercise is a viable treatment for ADHD. Many studies have indicated that exercise improves cognitive function. Exercise increases dopamine and is an affirming force when it comes to ADHD. For the Fitness Minute, I'm Annette Hammond. Visit our Facebook fan page at Fitness Minute with Annette Hammond.
welcome back. We are talking to some amazing, dynamic women. And though labels can be limiting and they can be negative and we can live up to them or live down to them as the case may be, they're also positive labels. And I think that we can apply and be aware of positive labels that we use, especially in this time where there's so many negative labels. And I also want to mention that I think not just labels and words do things, but how we're treated. So remember the last time you were in a family situation where you felt loved, empowered, and how that made you feel. And that is very powerful to pass on to other people. So I'd love to take this segment and talk positive labels in our life, the positive things we can imbue in others. And I just love to know your feelings on those. Jackie?
Yes, sure. The positive things that I see happening with me in the labeling is when I go back to my country, South America, and people look up to me. I mean, most of the time, we don't think much of ourselves. Mm-hmm. We think, oh, I wasn't aware, I wasn't able to do such and such thing, owning that business, being interviewed by so-and-so. I wasn't able to, buy that beautiful home in the hill, whatever that might be. So we downplayed ourselves, okay? Mm-hmm. But when you go to a country or whatever, or you go back to your town where you were born, where you grew up, and people look up to you and they ask you questions. Let me tell you something. Every time I go to South America and they come to pick me up from the airport, I feel like a rock star. I feel like an Oprah of my own in my own right. Everybody come and greet me, and they feel like I made it. Boy, I made it. I left town. I'm out there. And they want just a little piece of me or something like that, because they want to hear what I have to say. And I look at myself, I say, wow, I have no idea that they think of me that way. I'm pretty good, I feel good because I can give a piece of advice to somebody who might be following me. Why not? I mean, maybe I'm an inspiration for somebody. So welcome the labeling in that case. Let it in.
That's a lovely story. Lois?
Lois. I love this dynamic women label. I think that's brilliant because it gives us power. And I like the idea that, we can use the label to show how we can not let a label limit us. And that's what my story is about, and that's what my life is about now. So it's being part of Dynamic Women to say a label does not have to limit us to what we once thought it did. We are powerful. We can break it down and we can find a way around things. So that's what's important to me now.
Okay. This is Lou, and I think, we've spoken about this, that some labels do give us comfort, and for some people, they want to be comfortable remaining where they are. And that's that person, as I spoke when we were on the break, that, they don't change something from who they were in high school as the jock, or who they were in college as this, or, where at the high school reunion. Yet for many people, it's almost like, there's an older label that may have been applied to them. So, Jackie, it may have been, you were the one who left, and then all of a sudden now you are the one who came back. But there's labels that no longer fit. Mm-hmm. And in the same way that we have the ability to make choice on where we live, so you're no longer a Californian, you might be in New York. We also have the ability to change many things about ourselves because we want to. So we change our clothes, which has us be viewed and labeled slightly differently. We change our behaviors because we want to. And we can also change what we know as our labels and let others know that's how we perceive ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that is something that, it took me a long time to get used to saying I was an author. I remember my agent going, could you possibly please embrace it just for today? Because I was the researcher. I wasn't, I knew how to look for information. But that was the thing that, I was like, okay. And now the other thing that I think is a really great exercise that we can do it with people who are healthy, not under the influence of anything. Well, maybe a martini. But ask them what it is about you that is one of your best qualities. And it will surprise you. And it's something that, because we often only see ourselves one particular way, but others will see us in a way that will give us guidance to something that we didn't even know was a skill set, whether you call it a label, or when you talk about people having that thing that you do that nobody else can do. So those are those things where sometimes people will tell you, oh, you're the one who always has done this. Really? And you didn't know.
It's true. I think others may not view us the same way we think we are viewed. That's
right.
funny.
Right. So Jackie, you're now the one who, when people want to be with those who have a passion and have a direction. So you may have been known as the one who left. Now you're known as the one who did it.
I've seen this positive labeling with our daughter, actually, who is on the autism spectrum. And the moment that she stepped into that and owned it, and is now actually runs her own business around helping people on the autism spectrum, she just blossomed. It was just a beautiful thing. It took us ages to get her to that point, to say, I am autistic and I'm proud of it. But once she did, she absolutely blossomed, and her business is blossoming too. It's just wonderful to see that happen in people. So, yeah, that positive labeling is a great thing.
I really love it that you had the tenacity, Geraldine, to keep labeling her in a positive way as a child. I just admire my friends that have autistic children so much. And I've seen, this is Kathy, by the way, I've seen how focusing on those very positive attributes can give children so much self-confidence. And I think it's so important as parents. I'm just always aware when we do these shows that there may be young moms listening. And I want to say I learned this I was so grateful to be in Bible study fellowship as a teacher of the kids when I was a young mom, because I didn't know I was even doing this. I would say to the kids, don't sit on the chair, don't stand on the chair. And somebody said, well, all they hear is stand on the chair. They don't hear the don't in the front of the So I learned, I became very conscious of saying things in a positive way. And I think with kids, you can say to your beautiful daughter, I'm so proud of your beautiful heart. And that doesn't box a child into a stereotype at all. That just sets them free to be more in tune with the fact that they have a beautiful heart. So I love the idea. There's a wonderful verse in Proverbs that says the power of death and life is in the tongue. So I'm always looking for ways to use my tongue, which is, I use it a lot, but to use it in a way that's positive,
Yes. Words are certainly powerful. Mm.
And Jackie, I guess you're powerful in 2 languages.
4.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! I want to give you credit for that.
Did you just limit her? Right.
I did. Can I just say you're also smart, and I'm not meaning that as a stereotype.
Well, I am in good company. You ladies. We all shine in our own way.
Yes, most
This
definitely.
is an amazing group.
Geraldine, it's lovely to hear that your daughter has embraced and had a positive image through the autism label.
Well, it is, and they actually have. She has 2 children who are both on the autism spectrum as well, and her beautiful husband Steve, who is an amazing man, who loves them all. But no, high functioning, but still very much on the autism spectrum. But once she embraced it, and the children have now embraced it, it's made such a difference to each of them and happy to live within that label, I guess.
This is Lou. Can I ask, why don't we, when we're looking at something, for example, daughters, children, and your granddaughters or your grandchildren, what are the gifts that they possess? When we look at someone and wanting to put a label or say something, rather than looking at what is not there, why don't we look at what is there that shines? And whether it's a heart, whether it's a kindness, whether it's an ability to focus, whatever it may be, there's something that, you know, each one of us has a gift. And that when I talked before, and other people see it. We don't often see it. And there's that innocence of children that they have a quality of hope, and that, you know, and that gets rid of judgment and criticism. But oftentimes, the innocence of children, as we know, gets very much corroded. So our job is to look back and say, when I look at someone, what is it that's inside of them that really wants to shine? Where is, and then when you approach from that standpoint, there's a gentleness that even if you have the label of they are amazing with animals, that's magnetic, as opposed to something that shuts them down. So we're coming down to the last show.
We are, and I just want to say that I've learned so much from you all, because I think when we think about labels, we think of our own labels. But I love hearing that everybody else has stories as well. And I think what we've learned here is that positive labels can do so much good, and that we should really eschew the negative ones. I want to thank Geraldine Tegelov, Kathy Kravke, Lois Letchworth, Lou Paget, and Jacqueline Lopez for being part of the Dynamic Women Tribe this afternoon. We are always just so blessed by everything that you all add to our conversations. And I know that our listeners are finding that absolutely to be true as well. You can find out more at dynamicwomentalkradio.com. And thank you, ladies. It's been a pleasure spending time with you.
The same. Thank you so much,
Been
Linda.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in today to Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and join us each week. You can find more shows on dynamicwomentalkradio.com.